current Ukrainian president, Volodymyr Zelensky, previously worked as a comedian. Maybe you might have even seen some of the stuff he was in, such as the TV series called Sluga Narodu, or Servant of the People, where he actually plays a guy that then becomes the president of the country.
With us, you have the cards. But without us, you don't have any.
Zelensky might be the first comedian president of Ukraine, but they have definitely had clowns before. Meet Viktor Yanukovich. Ukraine's worst president, famous for his obsession with gold stuff, love of ostriches.
Что плохого, что я поддерживал? Скажите. Что я поддерживал этих страусов? Ничего не видеть?
And him being a bit of a Russian lapdog, hoping to turn Ukraine into the next Belarus. In 2014, after being in power for about 4 years, his administration became so incredibly unpopular that nationwide protests swept the country. The most famous, and sadly also bloody, of these protests took place on the Maidan Square in Kyiv. Yanukovych's government tried to put a stop to the protests several times, using police and riot gear.
The police have brought in armoured vehicles. They're using them to try to break through the barricades. The protesters are using them as targets.
And eventually resorting to straight up shooting the crowd with assault rifles. The crowd, however, refused to back down and started fighting back, turning what was a pretty small-scale protest into all-out urban warfare.
But we also saw one man firing a shotgun. We don't know what he was using for ammunition.
At this point, Yanukovych must have realized he was pretty much screwed and decided to run, via Crimea and then to Russia. Yeah, that really didn't help with the Russian lapdog accusations. After Yanukovych fled, a temporary government was formed, with elections planned to take place later in 2014. Parties hoping to throw in their bid for the presidency quickly got to campaigning.
Арсений Петрович, возьмите морковку. Арсений Петрович, как символ президентской власти. Вручаю вам. Чтоб я тебе не засунул. От Владимира Петрова приветик.
Ukrainian voters eventually ended up with a pretty interesting lineup for the 2014 elections. Those who thought that Yanukovych's shenanigans had been pretty rad actually, could still vote for his party, the Partiya Regioniv, or Party of Regions. Instead of Yanukovych, the party now had Mikhail Dobkin at its head, most famous for this video right here.
Все, я сделал.
Ну давайте.
Ешь, ну я прочитаю сначала, я ж текст не знаю.
Ты не в камеру, ты вот сюда смотри.
Да я думаю, как мне руки делать.
Да потом руки, давай, смотри в камеру.
Куда галстук? Скажи, к тебе или от меня?
Ко мне.
Я не могу сделать, потому что вот этот шнурок. Так, отходи отсюда.
Ты должен так говорить. Состояние дорог, больное место Харьков. В каждой точке города. Ну как бы, как с выражением. Давай, попробуй, поехали.
После города...
Ты можешь сказать это с выражением в одном тоне, только с мимикой твоего лица, как ты это умеешь делать? Ну это просто постная какая-то. Давайте по новой, поехали.
Тексты пишите нормальные, пишите какую-то.
Миша, не я честно говорю.
Данченко.
Давай.
Проезд по городу станет быстрым, удобным и выгодным для всех харьковчан.
Вот ты руку убрал сразу.
Да я ж закончил.
Ну так что ты закончил?
Apparently, just a few months before the elections, Dobkin had tried to become mayor of Kharkiv, but unfortunately for him, his practice tapes ended up leaking online. Now, if that didn't strike your fancy, you could always vote for former boxer and heavyweight champion Vitaly Klitschko and his party Udar, which literally means punch. Klitschko had even campaigned on the front lines of the Maidan protest, championing reform and closer ties to Europe. Besides his emphasis on social and economical reform, he was also known for his deep philosophical statements.
Я готов через любой выйти. И не нужно говорить, что Кличко кого-то боится или использует какие-то черные выходы или входы. Я вхожу всегда через двери. И не прыгаю, не выбегаю через окна или через какие-то другие. Поэтому ваши все какие-то...
Another candidate and icon of the Ukrainian political scene was Yulia Tymoshenko.
Пропало все.
From the party Batkivshchina, meaning fatherland. Known for starting beef with almost everyone and being a thorn in the side of the Party of Regions, Tymoshenko had previously been imprisoned under dubious circumstances by Yanukovych. When public pressure on the government grew, the Ukrainian parliament eventually voted to free Tymoshenko, who then promptly joined the Maidan protests. The last serious candidate I'll mention is Petro Poroshenko, who would eventually, with support of Klitschko's Udar, win the 2014 elections. This guy is kind of an oddball, who previously didn't really strongly support the pro-Russian or the pro-European parties, working alongside members of both sides. He got his start as a businessman, working mainly in the cocoa industry. His candy brand, Roshan, named after himself, is probably the most popular and well-known in Ukraine. A fact that landed him the nickname of the Ukrainian Willy Wonka. And say what you will about his politics, but his candy game is actually pretty on point, I can confirm. Now, so far I'd say this is a pretty solid lineup of parties we've got right here. There's a former boxer, a cat girl,
Kid, the mamu mau.
a candy tycoon, and even a party that seems to have based most of the program on 90s Russian gangster movies. For some people though, this just wasn't enough, and so a bunch of smaller, let's say, interesting parties start popping up, like these.
Що сталося?
Планета в небезпеці. Лиходій напав на Землю.
Час настав.
Мы, украинцы, трудолюбивый народ, жужжим от зари до зари, опыляем наши делянки, собираем нектар, но трутни у власти воруют наш мед. Хватит это терпеть, время жалить. По отдельности мы насекомые, вместе мы рой.
Человек, жива, жаль, безжалостно.
But in my opinion, the most interesting candidate and my main reason for making this video is this guy right here.
Я українець. Це моя земля.
Yes, in the 2014 Ukrainian presidential elections, Darth Vader, or as he likes to be known,
Дартом звать?
joined the race. So, who is this guy and what are his plans for the country? Let's take a quick look at his party program first.
Обещает кандидат в мэры переселить всех тещ на остров Змеиный, построить трассу от Одессы до планеты Татуин и решить проблему с доступным жильем.
Когда я захожу на пост мэра, я сразу же переселяю людей в катакомбы. Бесплатное жилье, вы понимаете? Бесплатное. Я иду в мэры для того, чтобы отменить вообще любую валюту. Деньги не нужны людям будут.
Удачи тебе, дорогой.
Спасибо.
Нормальный, красивый дядька.
Вы отдали свой голос на Дарта Вейдера?
Да.
Ким буде Чупака в вашому уряді?
Я думаю, что он займет Министерства здравоохранения. Просто мы знаем очень хорошо, что Чубака специфицируется на массаже простаты, что очень полезно для мужского населения.
And those are just about all the policy changes Darth Vader proposed to implement. As you might have gathered at this point, Darth Vader was not so much a man of words, but more so a man of action. Right about now, you are probably thinking something along the lines of, yeah, he's a bit of a troll, but seems mostly like a harmless goofball. And you are certainly not alone in this. Almost everyone in the Ukrainian media treated this guy like a clown and a troll, not really taking him seriously at all.
Вы же Дарт Вейдер.
С помощью этого светового меча Дарт Вейдер планирует бороться с коррупцией. Каждого берущего взятку будут лишать рук.
Is coming up right here. You don't show your face, you can't vote, and so she's not going to let. I'll vote. I'm going to vote. Yes, I am your candidate.
I also didn't think much of it at first, but once you really start looking into this guy, some questions start coming to mind. Like, where does he get his money from?
Money!
Running for president in Ukraine isn't cheap. They admit this themselves.
Абсолютно серьезно мы подали документы на регистрацию Дарта Вейдера как кандидата в президенты Украины, и мы внесли залог 2,5 миллиона гривен за его кандидатуру.
2.5 million hryvnia, accounted for inflation, is close to almost 200,000 euros today. And these aren't the only costs they've made either. You see, Darth Vader also ran for mayor in several cities. The ones I managed to confirm were Odessa,
Одеса – це Одеса.
Kyiv, Mykolaiv,
Миколаїв – це казка.
Lviv,
Львів – це скарб.
Kharkiv,
Харків – це мрія.
and Dnipropetrovsk.
Дніпропетровськ – це пісня.
Now, costs depend on the size of the city, with Kyiv being the most expensive, around 500 million hryvnia. But altogether, the confirmed cities alone would run them over 1 million hryvnia. He probably did run in more cities though, as some sources state that there were as many as 16 active Darth Vader candidates around 2014. Keep in mind here, 2014 wasn't even the only time Darth Vader entered in elections. It was certainly a peak in his election activities, but he had been sporadically campaigning before and would be campaigning after 2014. In terms of costs, this is probably just the tip of the iceberg. He would have had to pay for his custom vehicles, costumes, his troops, his advertisements, billboards, commercials, etc. That is quite a feat for a country where the average monthly wages amounted a little over 200 euros a month at the time. Another question that then comes to mind is why? Why spend millions of euros on a joke party with no real intentions to actually participate in politics? I believe the answers to the how and why of Darth Vader can be found in the organization that made him, Partia Interneta, or the Internet Party. Formed in 2007, the party had a pretty minor role in Ukrainian politics at large, mainly basing themselves in Odessa. The party's program is pretty generic and non-specific, with them campaigning for digitalization and being against corruption, the latter being a talking point of literally every single political party in Ukraine at the time. The most interesting aspect of the Internet Party, however, is its leader, Dmytro Holubov. This guy right here, and right here, skulking around in the background. Holubov is quite a character. Not only is he the leader of the Internet Party, and did he work with Poroshenko after his victory in 2014, he is also allegedly an infamous cybercriminal, stealing around $11 million by online and credit card fraud. According to Craig Grab, an experienced law enforcement officer for the US Postal Service, Holubov was at the center of an Odessa-based crime ring, running their operations on the forum Carda Planet, that Craig says hosted over 7,000 cybercriminals from all over Eastern Europe. On the forum, fraudsters could plan criminal conspiracies or exchange illegally obtained sensitive information. In the early 2000s, a joint investigation was launched by the Secret Service, the USPS, the FBI, and even the Russian FSB into Carter Planet and Holubov. While the Ukrainian government was initially reluctant to arrest Holubov, after the Orange Revolution of 2004 he was finally detained by Ukrainian law enforcement. After 6 months, however, Holubov was released again, after Judge Vladimir Skorik posted a bail for 100,000 hryvnia that was paid by deputies and members of Yanukovych's party of regions Vladimir Demyokhin and Vladimir Makenenko. Try to keep that little fact in mind. Then Holubov started the Internet Party that eventually landed him a job as a deputy himself, granting him political immunity from persecution. Not that that really mattered, as Holubov was eventually fully acquitted by the previously mentioned judge. As a totally unrelated matter, he was later fired from his function due to oath-breaking in several cases in the early 2000s, all of which involved the pro-Russian Communist Party and Party of Regions. So that's a lot. It might explain where some of the money came from, although according to Holubov himself, he made most of it through Bitcoin. Still, why would he waste his money, time and energy on a joke? What's the point? So turns out there's this thing in Ukraine called a techniczny kandydat, or technical candidate. According to professors in the Department of Political Science of Lviv Polytechnic, Pan Buchin and Pan Kalanchuk, a technical candidate is typically someone who enters into a political race not to necessarily win,
2 minutes to Mr. Vermin Supreme.
Thank you.
but to help another candidate or party. They often do this by either increasing the amount of positive attention political allies get, or by redirecting negative attention toward themselves, if their ally is in hot water. Besides doing positive things for their allies, they also often harass political enemies. This can be done in more blunt ways, by drawing attention to their scandals, or by making them up if there are none. A more insidious way technical candidates can mess with their opponents, however, is by fooling voters that would typically vote for their enemies, by making them vote for the technical candidate instead.
Є кандидат X, який боїться свого суперника Y. Він створює 3 технічних кандидати, які будуть відкушувати в його суперника голоси. Це можуть бути клони, які матимуть таке саме ім'я, а неуважний виборець може проголосувати не за того Петренка. Або просто кандидати, які працюватимуть на таку ж аудиторію, як і опонент. І забиратимуть частку його голосів таким чином. У результаті Y недоотримає голоси, а переможе найхитріший містер X.
Though technically legal, Buchin and Kalanchuk agree that it is a very unethical way to campaign, and, even worse, can ridicule and delegitimize a democracy in the eyes of voters, causing them to lose faith in the system as a whole. Right, so some of all of this is starting to make sense now, only who could possibly be the one who would want to set up such a party? Who could be behind Holubov and Darth Vader? It would probably be some political party that Holubov aligns with. Maybe they did some favors for him in the past. They would have to be a party with basically no allies, wanting to smear everyone around him, a party that just had a massive career-ruining scandal that needed a bit of a freak show to get some of the heat off of them. It would be a party that could profit from the fact that Darth Vader mainly reached young and generally pro-European, anti-Russian students.
Дарт Вейдер.
Конечно, Дарт Вейдер.
За что любишь?
Самый лучший.
Мэр нашего города. Я бы за него голосовала.
Meaning it would most likely have to be a pro-Russian party. They would show support to some of the members of that party, kind of how they did with this one guy. What was he called again? That's right, Alexei Alexeyevich Honcharenko. Long-time member of the Party of Regions who, fun fact, got a little $700,000 gift from a Gazprom executive, so basically directly from the Russian state.
Вам хтось позичив $500,000?
Більше.
Скільки?
Більше, ніж півмільйона. Ну,
600 тисяч доларів вам хтось позичив.
більше, ну, десь
700.
десь біля такої цифри.
700 тисяч доларів вам
Так,
хтось позичив.
так,
Просто
да.
так. Хто?
Скільки?
700
Хто?
тисяч доларів.
Тесть.
А де він взяв?
А він працював в російському Газпромі, ну як, в радянському. Не,
Бобер выдыхает.
Подождите секундочку, так вы расслабьтесь, с кем он работал? Он работал водителем Он работал водителем. Ну ладно, давайте я помолчу тогда.
But then if any interviewers asked the technical candidate about their endorsement, they would have to make some kind of joke or ignore the question so as to not make it too obvious.
Пишет о том, что вы вроде бы поддерживали кандидата Алексея Гончаренко на выборах в парламентских.
Это Люк Скайуокер, мой сын.
Люк Скайуокер, мой сын. Феноменально.
Я не знаю, я теряюсь.
Yeah, kind of like that. And finally, in the worst case, someone would have wanted the 2014 elections to look like a clown show, a farce without any meaning. Someone would have wanted Ukrainians to think democracy was a joke now that the pro-Russian beefcake was forced out of office. Perhaps some foreign adversary that had been trying to integrate the country into their own empire for years now. What I'm basically trying to tell you is that I think Barack Obama tried to destroy Ukrainian democracy. Thank you very much for watching the video. If you actually enjoyed it, you can consider liking or subscribing or one of those things. I would just like to say that I spent a lot of time in this video kind of ragging on Ukrainian politics. But I really don't want to take away of this video to be that Ukrainian politics are actually like a circus, or that they are useless or not valid or something like that. I think actually the message is quite hopeful, right? It's basically, I think, the story of a country that has had great internal and external pressure on it in hopes for them to kind of fail, right? And despite all of this, Ukraine has managed, right? They lived through the Maidan crisis, they lived through all the Darth Vaders, and right now they are also fighting back against more like overt aggression against them. What I didn't have time to mention here was that actually they did a lot of things to kind of fight these technical candidates. There was this commission that had to approve candidates for the presidency in Ukraine, and they actually, were aware of what was happening, that there was someone kind of trying to make a clown show into this, and that someone who was wanting to discredit Ukrainian democracy really pumped a lot of money into this project. And so a new law was passed in 2019 where people had to kind of show their face and their name to enter into presidential elections. One guy did do that. This is him right here. But since then, not a lot of them have popped up under Zelensky, basically. So yeah, I think we are kind of getting rid of the Darth Vaders, for better or for worse, slowly. That being said, thank you for watching once again, and have a good one.